All right, this is like a little bit old news, but we didn't have a new show last week, so I just wanted to touch on the Tote malfunction that we had during mainly affecting Tampa Bay Downs, but affected a bunch of other tracks across the country: Gulfstream, Santa Anita, Aqueduct, I believe. If you didn't see, basically after the second to last stakes race at Tampa, there was a Tote delay where they couldn't post the official uh, mutual results from that race. And then they started walking around the horses for the Tampa Bay Derby for a long time, hoping that the tote board would come back on. They'd be able to run the race. They were able to run the race, but not with wagering. It was a non-wagering event, pretty much a complete disaster by any sense of the word. And this is the kind of thing that like would never be acceptable in any other sport. Like if FanDuel goes down for a minute, then they send out an email apologizing. They give people credits, and everybody freaks out, and they get it back up as quickly as possible. You're going to be shocked to learn that that didn't happen with racing. They they basically took all night to figure it out and to get everything back up and running. No apology to the bettors that I saw. Maybe there was one somewhere along the way, but certainly was not at the top of any of these press releases. No wagering credits. I haven't seen anything pop into my account for that. And I saw a lot of finger pointing, in terms of accepting the blame for this. And I don't know. I'm not an expert in like the back end infrastructure type of deals that go on to process and pay out people's bets in racing. But I saw Roberts Communications basically being like, I'm tired of everybody blaming Roberts, and Amtote says they weren't down. And obviously the tracks were not at fault. And I think that that's definitely true. I think the tracks, especially Tampa Bay Downs, were kind of left in the lurch here. And I feel bad for Tampa, who has a great card. And obviously that was their marquee race of the meet, and people were not able to bet on it. So that cost them a bunch of money. But it's just like I said, it's not necessarily the malfunction itself, as disastrous as that was. It was the lack of communication, the lack of updates, the lack of accountability, and the lack of willingness to make it right for the bettors. Like that to me is the really unacceptable part of it. And this is a betting public that already is losing trust because they've seen like these late odds drops from the CAW wagers. And you can say until the cows come home that they're not pass posting, they're not betting after the races go off. When you see a horse pop out to the lead and went from 8-1 to 4-1 in the first flash, it makes people understandably suspicious. And now you have a situation where you had millions of people's of dollars in limbo somewhere in cyberspace, and we have to trust that you got the payouts right in the long run and got the right money to the right people. Like, I don't blame anybody who has a conspiracy. Usually I'm not a conspiracy guy, but anybody who has any conspiracy theories about this and the way it happened, I'm not going to talk you off of it, because this is an industry that does not engender trust in the betting public. And they're just banking on people's degeneracy that they'll come back the next day and bet hand over fist again. And sometimes they're right. And sometimes you might piss off the wrong person and they're not going to come back and bet your sport ever again. And we cannot afford to lose any bettors with bullshit like this. Moving on. We do have some racing this weekend, and I will be firing away probably as the degeneracy returns. But Fairgrounds has a big card. The Louisiana Derby card is coming up this weekend. Before we get to that, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to West Point Thoroughbreds stalwart Jackson Traveler, who won the Whitmore Stakes, a grade 3 on Saturday. And he is just one of the coolest horses in racing. He's the kind of horse that I would tip my hat to, even if I didn't work for West Point. But obviously I'm doubly attached to him. He's won stakes races in 5 straight seasons now. He's won stakes as a 2-year-old, 3, 4, 5, and 6-year-old. He cost $140,000 as an OBS April purchase. This is what everybody wants in a racehorse. It was a terrific race. He won by just the skin of his nose. And so shout out to Jackson and all of his partners, because what a ride he's taken us all on. Moving forward to this weekend, we got the Louisiana Derby card at Fairgrounds, all graded stakes, all grade 2, late pick 4, big fields. We're going to talk to Andrew Stewart a little bit later from Arian Pedigrees. We were talking about the field size. That's been a big problem in American racing. Not a problem on Saturday at Fairgrounds. Tons to look forward to. I think right now you have also the Oaks, the Kentucky Oaks favorite, Tarifa, is going to run in the Fairgrounds Oaks after a really nice win in the Rachel Alexandra Stakes. John, just give me your take on the Louisiana Derby card, because there's a lot to dig into.
There's definitely a lot to like, Joe. Just to jump on the bandwagon, on the Jackson Traveler bandwagon. I didn't realize till we started talking about it. The horse has run 28 times and ran at 12 different racetracks. 12 different racetracks. I didn't even know there were 12 different racetracks in existence anymore. And the horse has basically set hoof on every single one of them. $900,000 in earnings, and just a stalwart. I mean, not even, you would say like a grinder or a compiler. I don't think so. I mean, he actually has won graded stake races, like you said, in a number of different years, which is really, really cool. Anyway, tip of the cap to Jackson and what he's done for you guys. The Fairgrounds card is really exciting to me, not only because we have Webslinger running in the Grade 2 Muñez Memorial, number 3 in your program, number 1 in your heart, little Webby, and but then you go on to the Oaks and Louisiana Derby, and it is just a great card. That's being put together at the fairgrounds. I'm genuinely excited to see a couple of these preps, for the Kentucky Oaks and for the Kentucky Derby. We have Kenny McPeak coming on to talk. He's got 2 horses in each of those 2 races, which is really, really a cool thing to have. And you mentioned, Tarifa, who's arguably going to be the favorite for the Kentucky Oaks. But I like a couple of horses here in the Louisiana Derby that I think are a little bit off the beaten path that we haven't spoken about before. Honor Marie is an honor code, a modestly purchased honor code, $40,000. And, broke his maiden in an auction maiden race because he was eligible for it. And just every single race has improved since his, going through his 2-year-old year. The Risen Star, he was a dead closer, broke, 11th out of 12 and made a huge run in the slop on a speed favoring racetrack. I think Honor Marie, if he gets a fast track, that he's going to be a horse to look at. And how about Hall of Fame, who, everyone was talking about for the Risen Star and kind of put in a clunker. I'm going to chalk it up to the fact that it was in the slop and more so than anything else. Maybe he bounced because he was eligible to bounce. He ran a 66 buyer, jumped up to a 94 when he won by double digits, at the fairgrounds. And then after, just 4 weeks, they ran him right back into the Risen Star, which again, I think he bounced more than anything else. I think those 2 horses are horses that we should be talking about. In addition to Catching Freedom, who literally has increased and improved every single race that he's run so far.
I think it's an interesting race in that there's not a ton of speed on paper, but the only speed, the main speed, is drawn way outside in Track Phantom, who just got beat a half length by Sierra Leone in the Risen Star. So I don't know, like he's to me the horse to beat, but I'm curious of whether some other jockeys are going to be kind of aggressive to try to get him caught wide going on that first turn, although it is a long stretch run before they hit the first turn. So he seems to hold the cards from a pace standpoint. Obviously, $1 million race, you would think people are going to know that. The jockeys are going to know that going into the race and are going to adjust their tactics accordingly. But I agree. I think Hall of Fame, if he gets lost a little bit from a betting standpoint, he would be the one I would be most interested in. I think he's going to get the right kind of trip. A couple other news items we want to touch on. We lost Improbable in the past week. Obviously a star on the racetrack, multiple Grade 1 winner. He did it over multiple seasons as well, was at Wistar, passed away, untimely death in the past week or so. And he was a horse that I thought a lot of his, and I'm no expert, but I thought a lot of his horses at the 2-year-old sale. And there were a couple that we were in on that we were the underbidder on. And I was really hoping we would get one because there's something about his horses. They're really well built. They looked great. They breezed fast. They did a lot of right things. So he died Saturday night at Root and Riddle. He was being treated for the muscle disorder ataxia, which is obviously a very serious thing, can affect their coordination. It can eventually have neurological symptoms as well. He said, quoting Elliot Walden here, it said, he was sent to Root and Riddle Saturday morning to determine the exact cause of the ataxia. He was responding well to treatment, but he went to lie down in his stall and fell awkwardly. As a result, he broke his right tibia, which could not be prepared. So that's devastating. He was only 8 years old, seemingly had his whole life, certainly had his whole life ahead of him, but also a really promising stallion career ahead of him as well. John, what did you think? I think he's got a couple of crops still to come. He might turn out to be a little bit of a sneaky sire, and it's unfortunate we only got a couple crops out of him.
Well, I think a lot of people were anticipating his foals to run as 2-year-olds. With City Zip being a sprinter and being a blazing fast horse, and they anticipated that the Improbables were going to do well the under tax shows, subsequently sell well, and show up as 2-year-olds. So I think everyone is in great excitement for to see his foals even before this passing. Joe, you mentioned before that Elliot Walden, Wistar president, was quoted as saying that the horse died due to complications of ataxia, which again is a neurological issue. And it's also the same thing that befell Arrogate years ago. They both had issues with ataxia, and they both neurologically had issues with standing and being able to hold their own weight. And ultimately, that was their downfall. For each one of them, that had to be put down. There are others that have been put down due to ataxia. It's not quite as a higher percentage as you would think it would be, based on the fact that you had a couple of 2 high profile horses like Arrogate and now Improbable, having to be put down. But it is a concern. I know years ago there was a big issue with EPM, which again is a neurological issue, and there's medications for it, and there's things you can do for it, and that's a little bit more widely spread because it comes from the feces of animals like raccoons and things like that. That may get into the water or the food supply of a horse. But this was unfortunate. That this young, stout kind of horse went down with a neurological issue. And again, it was the same one as Arrogate. So, you can make your own assumptions and connections as you see fit.
Yeah. I mean, just, and he wasn't like one of these horses that ran 2-3 times and got whisked off the stud. So I'm hoping that there will be a little bit of soundness to his horses in addition to speed, but time will tell. One other thing to touch on, a little bit lighter than that, just to wrap up this segment. I don't know if you've seen the Twitter war, the budding Twitter war. Well, it's been interesting though, because Jon Stewart. So if you haven't seen Jon Stewart, who was a new entrant into the industry, spent a ton of money last year at the sales. He runs under Resolute Racing. Is kind of taking some shots at Mike Repole, the commissioner of horse racing, and it's. I kind of side with Repole on this, actually, because Jon Stewart is running his mouth off for a guy who seemingly has very little experience in the industry. Not to say that he can't have an opinion and can't have better ways for us maybe to do some things, but I kind of side with Mike when he's like, I'll give you a tour of the winner's circle, which I've been to 1,000 times, and you don't even have any horses racing just yet. But John, what did you make of this? Was this just
I'm on Team Stewart, actually. I looked at it and I thought that when Jon Stewart had a couple of things to say, and Mike again went low, when people go high, he goes low, and was basically like, oh, you own a farm? Here's my farm. And he showed a picture of Manhattan, and let's not forget, look, it's not like Mike has been in the business for decades and decades. So for him to say, oh, you're a newbie, cracked me up, because it's like, well, wait a second, you weren't even in the horse business 10 years ago. So let's
except that he did buy, like he started with claimers. Right. So he has seen the industry from the bottom to the top.
I'm not doubting that.
He didn't come in out of nowhere and spend $1 bajillion and say he knows, what to do about racing.
Right. And again, I think if you read John's tweets, he's not saying I know how to fix racing. I think that he's trying to promote racing, and he's also saying the same things that we were saying a couple of weeks ago, which is, hey, if you're trying to act like if you want to be a leader, act like a leader. Don't say things, and then when people want to join in the conversation and come up with ideas, you immediately say, well, what do you know? I'm richer than you and I'm smarter than you. It's like I think that's why I'm siding with Jon Stewart. Now, that being said, there's a horrible or great tweet, depending on how you look at it, of him being Jon Stewart standing next to his $800,000 vehicle and letting Goodnight Olive sniff the leather of his $800,000 vehicle. And to me, that churns my stomach, because it's like, really, you have to show me how rich you are. You can't. So again, I don't think either one of them I would necessarily say are beyond reproach or anything like that. I think they both have decent points to talk about, but yeah, it's just a rich guy picking on another rich guy, and quite frankly, I can sit on the sidelines and enjoy it. And because I don't have skin in the game. Although you did pick Team Repole over Team Stewart in your bracket as well.
Maybe. Well, first of all, that picture, that was like something like that MC Hammer would have done back in the day when he had horses. You know what I mean? I could picture that photo shoot 1,000%. So maybe Jon Stewart is the reincarnation of MC Hammer in racing.
Can't touch this.
No, can't touch it at all. But seriously, like if they both wanted to come on the show and have a pissing contest here on Rail Talk, we'll bring our umbrellas. Come on, come do it. We'd love to have you.